If you like Star Trek and Star Wars and you like ship battles, you'll like this channel. And if you like what you see, please subscribe and make a comment. It helps. It really does. And with that being said, let's get started. So we've been talking about Klingon Bird of Prey, the Burrell class, and all its sub-variants like the K-Vord and such. And we've been talking about its shields and its hull and its mass. Now I want to talk about weapons, what everyone really cares about. So the first thing I want to talk about is the Disruptor that is seen in the 2070s. So what we refer to as the Klingon Scout, the Burrell, the first from the movie. When we analyze that, we find out that it has a power output of 3,750. It has a volley rate of 14. So that means that both disruptors together, when they're firing, they're going to fire 14 times. And those two disruptors are going to equal 52,500. So if the Klingon Bird of Prey decloaks, it can choose to fire 14 blasts from its disruptors and will deliver 52,500. Or it can choose to launch its torpedoes, but we'll talk about the torpedoes in a bit. So the real answer is, how do those compare to Type 7 phasers? Now the reason I'm going for Type 7 phasers is because the Constitution class was using Type 7 phasers. So when we analyze it, what we find out is the Type 7 phaser comes down to a power output of 2,800. So you can see that the Klingon Disruptor is stronger. But there is an advantage that the Enterprise has over the Burrell. And that's that the Enterprise can fire 20 shots instead of 14. So that means that its output level is actually going to be 56,000. So that means that there is an increase with the Type 7 phaser. It's actually better than the Klingon Disruptor. Though the Klingon Disruptor is hitting you with a stronger punch per blast, they're unable to fire the volley that the Type 7 ball phasers are capable of doing. So with that being said, technically the Type 7 phaser would be the better weapon of choice. Now, another thing to take in consideration is that the Klingon Disruptor doesn't have very far range. You have to be pretty close to your enemy in order to fire this weapon and be effective. So that's another disadvantage to the Disruptor, is you need to be in range in order to use this weapon, and you have to be in close range for it to be able to fire. But that doesn't really matter because they have a cloaking device and it will offset that weakness. I don't really have any actual data to support this, but based on my canon in my head, I think that these disruptors, yes, they hit stronger. I think that they take less power to charge and to produce the the blast itself than the Type 7 phaser arrays or phaser emitters. I think that the Burrell is using a cheaper weapon. I really think that the disruptors that the Klingons are using at this time they're powerful. I mean, they're not that far off from the Federation, but I think that they're probably more budget friendly than the ball phasers. So next on our list is simply the Photon Torpedo. So the Klingons use a pretty standard torpedo. It's identical to the ones that are being used on the Enterprise, and they have a hit point of 65,000. And these torpedo launchers that are on Birds of Prey during this time period are what we refer to as one shot. So they shoot one shot, then they have to be reloaded. So that's pretty simple. Alright, so if you decloaked and you decide you want to attack a Federation target, you could decloak and fire your torpedo for 65,000 points of damage, or you could choose to fire one single bolt of 3,750, or you can use the entire payload, which would be 7 shots per disruptor, which would be 26,250. Now it's up to you to decide what you wanted to do, or you could fire both disruptors simultaneously together for 14 shots for 52,500. So, obviously, with that being said, the disruptor cannon technology has progressed over the years. So, in Kirk's era, it was 3,750, and then the TNG era, it was 32,500. Now, there is something that we have to note about during the Dominion War. So, when reviewing, I had seen that at one point they were firing 6 blasts that took out a Jem'Hadar fighter. So, that means each blast would have been worth 87,000 point scale of damage. But during the same time period, we've seen them use the 32,500. So what that means is the disruptors can be scaled up and down for less blasts, but for a higher output of damage. So if you really were hitting a big target and you wanted to just get in and get out as quickly as possible, it is possible to up your disruptors to 87,000. You could deliver 6 shots, which would equal 520,000, then decloak and get out of there. Or if you were attacking a smaller target that might maneuver and get away, you could bring it down and use your 32,500. But no matter what you do or how powerful you choose to do it, each disruptor cannon can do 174,000 points of damage per disruptor cannon before it has to recharge. So, with that being said, you're delivering at an absolute complete max of 522,000 points of damage if you push it to its absolute max. Now, another interesting thing is if you look at the heavy Klingon disruptor on the Volca class cruiser, the one that was attacking the USS Defiant, it too has the same capabilities of firing one incredibly powerful blast or bringing the blast down to a smaller, more reasonable fire rate. So, the most powerful we've ever seen it shoot is when it blows up a Kavort class ship in one shot when its shields are down. So that means that the heavy disruptor on a Klingon ship is capable of firing one bolt of 520,000 points of damage. That's a lot of power in one shot. Or the heavy disruptor could be scaled down to fire multiple times at 148,571. But it's typically firing one bolt of 520,000 is what we've seen it do most of the time. Now, if the heavy disruptor is firing the 571, it was in a beam form. So they can obviously change it to be like a giant bolt of energy, or they can change it to almost a phaser-looking beam with the disruptor, but with a lower output. So that would be effective against a small target like the Defiant, and that's when we saw this. So it was interesting to see that Klingon weapons can raise up and down. You don't really see that with the Rollians, and you don't see that with the Federation weapons. The only power scaling changes that I see was with Klingon disruptor technology and weapons. So apparently Klingons can manipulate their weapon output on their weapons. Actually, I take that back. We do see the Federation change the output of phasers. We know for a fact that Type 10 phasers have been scaled up and down depending on the circumstances. So that's actually not a correct statement. Alright, so the next thing to talk about is torpedo technology. And there's not a whole lot to say about this. So in the 2270s, their torpedoes were 65,000 points of skill on the damage scale. And then in the 2360s, it's 171. So they increased quite a bit in the 2360s. Now, one thing to note is in the 2270s, almost all Klingon ships were using single-shot torpedo launchers, and pretty much the same thing with the Federation. But the Katanga was using a modified torpedo launcher, which was capable of launching 3, which was a pretty sophisticated piece of technology for that time period. And then we know in the 2360s, the birds of prey were still using single shot torpedoes, but they were 171. And then when it comes to the modern like Volca class cruisers, we don't really ever see them firing torpedoes. So I'm assuming that they're using something similar to like a Galaxy class where they could fire, a lot. but we don't really know that for sure. In the mirror universe, we see a Klingon bird of prey, which was capable of firing 5 torpedoes. So it's very likely that Klingons in the TNG era were either using a torpedo launcher which launches 3 or 5. So I don't know. So it depends how you view the mirror world. So the mirror world, they're shooting 5. It's a possibility. And then what we see on screen, we know for a fact they can shoot 3. So we don't have any actual data on torpedo launching with TNG or DS9 with the Klingons. But since the Klingons and the Federation are sharing technology, most likely their big Volca-class cruisers are probably using torpedo launchers that are equivalent or equal or the same as the Federation, and they're probably capable of launching between 8 or 10. But that's a hypothesis. What do you guys think? How do you guys feel? Did you like this? Let me know in the comments. Okay, so it's really obvious during the 2270 era, Kirk's era, that the big weapon, what you wanted to hit your enemy with, was definitely torpedoes. Torpedoes were stronger and more effective than disruptors. But we can see that the torpedo technology drastically fell down in efficiency, or maybe in price. We don't really know. But disruptor technology skyrocketed in the TNG era. So, I mean, going from 3,750 to, a max of 520 with a heavy disruptor. I mean, that is a astronomically high amount of technology increase from that generation to the next. But when you look at torpedo technology, it kind of stagnant. I mean, 65 and then 171. Yeah, it's gotten better, but you don't see that increase that you're seeing, which is exponentially larger with disruptors. So Klingons definitely were focusing on disruptors. Not to mention disruptors, all you got to do is charge up and fire. Torpedoes, you have to build them and they're expensive. So it's definitely a more budget friendly weapon to use disruptors than torpedoes. So I think that's why the emphasis on weaponry definitely focused on disruptors in the future, and it was really good because the Klingon, not only was the Klingon Empire had budgetary issues, leading up into the TNG era, but this is a more effective means for your military than a bunch of ships with torpedoes, which are expensive and have to be replaced with every shot. So I hope you guys enjoyed my video. So if you liked it, please subscribe. Please make a comment, and I'm curious what your guys' opinions are about what I said. Do you think I was accurate? Do you think I missed anything? How do you feel about the Klingon weapons? Do you think I gave them an accurate breakdown? Did I miss